Alright, gang, so I'm late. I realized that the announcement was made yesterday. I probably should have made a video yesterday, but Thursdays are really rough for me, so thank you, Bethesda. I work two jobs, and one of them is teaching at night, and Thursday nights I teach like a really long class, so I don't get home until it's really late. So as such, we're not making a video until today. So sorry about that. We're gonna talk about the patch note changes. I'm probably gonna breeze through some of the actual changes because I'm sure many of you have already seen them. If you have not, I will include a link in the description down below so that you can go check them out. That being said, let's just hop right to it, right? So we're gonna go ahead and kind of scroll through and see exactly what they're doing. So Tazcad cost is changed to 9. Um, I really don't think that this is going to impact Tazcad's playability at all. I think we're still going to see him probably in most, if not all, agility decks. He's still just that good. I mean, when you compare him to other 9 cost cards, or even some 10 cost cards, of which there's only 2 now, but, you know, Tazcad at 9 is probably still just as strong as a Manticora, right? So I think his power level is just fine at 9. The fact that he has charge and makes him aggressive, I think, means that he still fits in aggressive decks. If you're looking for something with reach or like that has a finisher, he's probably still better than, or at a minimum on par with, but probably still better than, I would say, Supreme Atromancer in most matchups. Atromancer is probably really good against something like Ramp Scout because they don't have the board sweeps, but yeah, I think Tazcad at 9, he'll still see play. He's fine. Kinsman, he is going from a 3-3 to a 3-2. Again, I really don't see this impacting Kinsman's play at all. In fact, I would almost argue that he's still a must play in probably 90-95% of agility decks. Um, while I'm not going to say it never happened, most of the time Kinsman wasn't really trading with the smaller minions. Um, you know, certainly in say like mid-range archer, they don't care if he's a 3-2, a 3-1, whatever. They care that he swings for 3, and they care even more so that he's a drain for 3. That's huge when you start talking about life totals. The fact that if he trades with even one minion, right? If it's a 1-for-1 trade, but you also get a drain for 3, it's a 6-point swing. And if you're trying to maintain the house lead, he still does it all. So at 3-2, he's, yes, he dies to Firebolt. Yes, he can't attack into Kvatch Soldier and live. I don't think either of those things matter. So, moving on, Twilight and Moonlight Werebat. 4-2 now instead of 4-3. Again, I honestly don't think this impacts him too much. It will kind of suck now because of intelligence decks, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But I think intelligence decks are going to be on the rise. I think Int will be the new agility because Firebolt does get kind of a buff through the fact that some key cards were nerfed. So obviously Firebolt is better because we have 2 minions that are heavily played that now have 2 health that didn't used to have 2 health. Also Firestorm, right? So the Werebat goes to a 4-2. Still good, right? Still drains. So again, as you're talking about agility, you're talking about trying to get that health lead for, say, like a Solarus Marshall play. If you hit for 4 and you gain 4, it's an 8-point swing. You're probably going to have the health lead. I think he's still every bit as good. But you just have more ways to deal with him if you run into him and he ends up in the shadow lane, you now don't just have Crushing Blow or Lightning Bolt or Javelin or whatever, right? You now also have Firebolt, and you also have Firestorm. So again, I think that Firestorm might start seeing a bit of a rise because we've got more minions that are going to be 2 health, and then as we get a little bit further into the changes, there's some other big changes. So keeping on, we have Brilliant Experiment. It's going up to a 3 cost. The idea is that they don't want you doing what they call the Manticora cycle, right? You play Manticora, and then on the exact same term, you copy it with Brilliant Experiment so you can cycle them. It's going to suck, but I don't think it's going to honestly backbreak the card. So you can still get there with Elixir of Magica. So Manticora becomes the new Mirac. Without ramp, you're not you're not going to be copying your 11 cost stuff. So sorry, saving your last charge of the Elixir of Magicka to start trying to cycle with Miraak. Probably not going to happen anymore. But you can still copy Tribune, which is pretty important. It's won me a fair share of games, and you can still copy Manticores if they do live. So I don't think that the card is necessarily like nerfed to oblivion. You can still copy Aaron, but it's certainly taken a big hit. It basically just means there's inherent risk involved. I will say you might start seeing Brilliant Experiment pop up more in, say, like Sorcerer ramp control builds, though, right? Because as long as you're ramping, then it doesn't matter. You can still copy Blood Magic Lords and, whatever else you want. Elusive Schemer, down to a 3-1 from a 4-1. People very rarely played this for the attacking portion. They played it because of the other part, right? They played it because it replaced itself and drew a card, and you get the 0 cost one. So even in the aggressive decks that run like Skulk, you really are playing it because Skulk fetches the 0 cost versions out. In Control, you played it because it was a body and it replaced itself, and long-term generated value. This will still see play, but it is kind of a big hit. When you think of the number of minions that have 4 health that are heavily played, right? This just takes away one way that you could kind of solo trade into them. So that means Solarest Marshal, Cliff Racer, Jarl, the Mammoth, right? Like there's a fair number of 4 health minions that get played. It also just means that lightning bolts are kind of more at a premium, as are javelins because of dealing with the bigger stuff. It means that you no longer have more ways to deal with the things that Ice Storm didn't kill, so that was the other problem, right? Like that threshold between 3 and 4 health is bigger than I think people realize. So the next, Divine Fervor, goes to 5. This is kind of backbreaking in some respects and kind of not in others. So it really hurts Spellsword Token, and they specifically talk about it in their reasoning. Largely they're talking about how in the lower ranks, so basically among new players, Spellsword Tokens have like a high win rate, which makes sense because they basically build the deck for you coming out of story mode, right? So it's going to be played, it's good, makes sense. In Arena, card also basically won games if you had it. I honestly think even at 5 the card will still win games if you have it. Like, it's just even that good in Arena at 5. But in constructed play, moving it from 4 to 5 kind of hurts for a lot of reasons. One is that at 5, right, if you're even if you have like the Elixir or you're going first or whatever the case may be, you actually can't play it pre-Firestorm now. So again, kind of going back to what I was talking about with Kinsman and with Werebat, right? I think with those two being nerfed, we might see a rise in Firestorm popularity. So if you were, worried about that and you're already playing cards that you might want to pump up with Divine Fervor so that they survive Firestorm or on later turns maybe even survive Ice Storm, you're one turn deeper, right? So there's no way that you're going to play Divine Fervor pre when they could play Firestorm if you both have it. So I think that really hurts it. I think Spellsword certainly takes a hit. I think, however, that the card is not dead entirely. So decks that will probably still play Divine Fervor even at 5. I think that the token monk or the mid-range monk versions that are still playing it will probably still play it, largely because of the presence of Solarest Marshal. Solarest Marshal means that you can still play it for free, and free is the right price for just about anything. So I don't think it hurts monk as much. I'm also kind of curious to see if this going to 5 means more people will take a longer look at Thieves' Den too. But that's a side thing. So the other deck I think might still play it, or at least I know I'm going to experiment with keeping it in at least for a bit, is Crusader. Largely because Crusader isn't like mid-rangey, at least not the way that I play it, right? With the Crusader deck that I play, it's really about like long-term value for your burst. I run charge, 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 lots of charge. So even if I play Divine Fervor on an empty board, yeah, it's a tempo loss, but I make it up that much quicker because I don't have to play a minion and then wait for the advantage. You know, you play a minion and then you go, right? Divine Fervor on an empty board, but then I play Raiding Party, right? Like I'm already immediately getting value out of it. So I think that I'll probably keep it in Crusader for a bit, and if I find that it's too slow, we'll look for some alternative options. Thankfully, Crusader's getting some new options, which we'll see here down below. But yeah, I think for right now, I think Monk will probably still play it. I think Crusader will probably still play it, and we'll see. So the Apprentice Potion and the Healing Potion are going from 1 to 2. And then they give you this big long paragraph about how health gain is powerful with the rune system, which cracks me up because I don't think that that's the case at all, actually. I think that no-brainer health gain is not powerful because it delays you from getting runes. And that health gain after you've taken, I would say, like 15 damage is powerful because now I've drawn 3 runes and now I want to stabilize. So it's interesting that they're increasing the cost because they want people to try to play it for free off of Prophecy, as opposed to, you know, if you've ever played against a Control Mage, they'll hit a Prophecy, they throw a card in hand. 9 times out of 10, that's a Healing Potion because they want you to crack runes and they're going to save it for later. So I guess in a way it kind of punishes them for that play, but I don't think moving it from 1 to 2 really matters. You know, when half of your game is spent, like, play a thing and pass the turn, like squeaking in 2 Magicka instead of 1, not a big deal. So I'm not even sure why they targeted this. That card never felt really oppressive. Even when I hard cast it, I'll be honest, I wasn't ever really excited. You know, old Control Mage used to play Shimmering Peddler. Maybe you got some synergy there, but yeah, I don't know why this card got targeted, but it is what it is. This next card, we know why it got targeted. So, Nakreen the Dragon Priest now costs 9 instead of 10, so that's good. But he now says draw a card and reduce that card's cost to 0. So you no longer get to pick, right? It's going to be whatever card comes off the top. That's kind of a bummer, right? That means no more save my Elixir of Magicka and then on turn 9 I cheat in to play Odahviing. Unless you get really lucky, right? That being said, there's a lot of people, so this is the benefit of making my video a day late. There's a lot of people who are decrying the death of this card, that it's basically unplayable, it's unreliable. You know, what happens if I get like a 1-cost card off of the top? Yeah, those are all really valid points. I don't think it's going to be the true death of the card the way people think. By moving it to a 9-cost instead of 10, it's no longer competing with when you would want to play Manticora, right? So I can tell you the number of times on my turn 9 that I've done almost nothing in Control Mage, or even in other control decks that run Int. So at a minimum, right, like he's an expensive one, but he's like a 5/5 that draws you a card who's overcosted. But as a 1-of, it's not the end of the world. And he does have the potential to give you some value with the 0-costed card, right? So really, if you consider that, you know, a 5/5 for 5 is like your baseline stats. You know, there's the Boar in Willpower that is exactly that. It's just a vanilla 5/5 for 5. So, you know, if you factor that in, really to get your value, to go like even on value, I would say you have to hit something that costs 4 or more. So you're spending 9. If you get a 5/5, and then you also get to play something that costs 4 for free, because you also drew the card, right? So it'd be like 5/5, draw a card, and play something for 4 for free. I think that's your break-even point. Now, when you look at a Control Mage deck, right? The cards that cost 4 or more versus the cards that cost less than 4 is pretty balanced, right? Like it's if it's not 50-50, it's pretty close. There's a lot of people who will say, well, 50-50 is not, you know, accurate enough. Well, I've seen people who run Cunning Ally with less than a 50% chance of getting a free Firebolt, but they still run it, and they run 3 copies of that. Now, I understand that it's because you're also trying to fill your early game slots, you're trying to trade, you're trying to survive. There's a greater emphasis. I get that. But if you have one late game card that's got a 50-50 shot of making an insane play, I think it might still be worth it, right? I mean, we run Ungolem, and a lot of times he's an enraged Mudcrab for us. Like, you'll play him, and he does nothing, or you'll draw him late, and he does nothing. So, I don't think the card is as dead as people think. I also think that, and this may just be me, but I think that he creates some interesting things for, like, Wisp Mother. So before you would have to like have a Wisp Mother on the table and then play Dragon Priest to get you like your insane copy to lanes combo. Now, if you don't have Wisp Mother on the table, you can still play him and then keep whatever you draw in hand as a zero cost option. And then later when you draw Wisp Mother, if the game is running long, you can blow your combo then. So I think he actually for Wisp Mother decks gives you some more flexibility. But yeah, I don't think the card is as dead as people think. I think he will certainly not show his true power for a while, because I think that on the day the patch hits, everyone's going to dust him because he's been decried dead, and that nobody will give him the proper experimentation he needs. But in all honesty, I don't think it's as horrible. Like, there are worse cards that still exist than this guy. He is by far, in a way, not completely unplayable in my mind. So, all right, that's enough on the Dragon Priest. Moving on. Hrothgar Artisan, right? It went from a 2-2 to a 2-3. It's funny because they say they wanted to provide a slight buff to Orc decks because of their underperformance in versus play. Well, if you were playing Orcs in versus play already, you were already running this guy, right? It's not like, oh, I wasn't running him, but now I will. You just get like one more health. Most of the Orc decks were aggressive in nature, or at the minimum like mid-rangey, so the one more health probably doesn't matter as much. It probably would have been better with one more attack. So this one feels really arbitrary. I think he might be more attractive in Arena now. Like, I almost always passed on him because he was a 3-3 for 3 whose stats were divided, right? Like, he was the wolf. He was the endurance version of the wolf that's a 3-3 for 3, but it's really a 2-2 and a 1-1. So now he'll trade slightly better. But, I mean, outside of Arena, if you were looking to play this guy, you were already playing this guy, so... now this next one, which is meant to be a buff for Orcs, is kind of a big deal, right? It says Orc Gatekeeper. I'm assuming this is the Morkel Gatekeeper. Gains Prophecy. So, reasons why this is big. One, he's a 4-2 in stats, so even if he buffs himself, that's pretty aggressive. This guy also had Guard, so he gives Strength an option to prevent lethal, right? Normally, unless you got like, Ambusher or Sharpshooter Scout, and that also was enough to kill a minion, Strength was kind of just out of luck, right? Like, you took a shot to the face in Strength, and your Prophecy cards didn't do much to help you. So, gives them that, but it's also, like I said, it's a 4-2 in stats, it's aggressive, lets you divide the stats if you want, so you can put the Guard in the way of something, and if the 2 attack would just outright kill it, then you can just pump something else up. I think he's going to end up being a pretty big tempo swing. And I think that even though that this was meant to be something for strength and a small buff to Orc decks, there's some other stuff that are going to benefit from this, but I'll talk about that at the end. Alright, so Dunmer Nightblade makes an iron sword instead of a steel sword. I don't think anyone was calling for this card to be nerfed. It has seen some play, but not a ton. If I'm being entirely honest, I don't think that this was like a gameplay balance nerf. I think this was what I would call a flavor nerf. I mean, they even say right here, like, this change should improve both its gameplay and aesthetics, right? To me, this is a flavor nerf. Because if I'm logically thinking, I have a guy with 2 attack power, and he dies, and he leaves his weapon behind, and somehow that thing had 3 attack power. So what you're telling me is, that guy on the battlefield made the weapon worse, right? Like, he took a great sword and put foam pads on it, right? Like, he was completely inept with using his weapon, so much so that, like, he never ever got full value out of it, right? Like, it just, flavor-wise, it's kind of comical. So, it's not like he had a sword and then, like, when he died, he imbued his essence into it, making the sword stronger, because it's not like imbued sword, it's steel sword. Like, it's literally just like the dude died and you picked up a sword from the battlefield. So, 100% in my opinion, this is just a flavor nerf, but I'm okay with it. Um, because it's not really affecting too many decks. And if it makes sense flavorfully, then whatever. Alina Banak, this is yet another like flavor change. So she can now shoot people in the face. Her previous incarnations could only shoot creatures, but pretty much like every other archer based card, they call them archer based, but it's not like because of the archer class type. It's actually kind of funny that all of the things that ping have been in strength instead of like agility, right? Like that feels weird. Like I'm big, I'm strong, I wield a battle axe. Look at me, I'm strong, but also pew pew, right? Like, but like sharpshooter scout can shoot creatures or faces. Ambusher can also only shoot creatures, but it would be too strong otherwise because it's like a fireball, and I guess it ambusher instead of like a archer type card. It makes sense because you're ambushing like a group, but um, the 3/1 guy just deals 1 damage, right? So like there's a bunch of strength based cards that like just deal 1 damage, and Alina can only do it to creatures, so this change makes sense. And the last change is Volendrung. It gains Breakthrough. I think this one was asked for a few times on the forums and on Reddit, and it makes sense, right? +4/+4 twice for the amount that you invest into that card seemed pretty lackluster. Even with the Breakthrough, I'll be honest, I don't see this seeing a lot of play. It might see play some more in Arena now because that might decide some games. Maybe it'll see play in some mid-rangey decks because of the Breakthrough going through guards. I don't know. I guess we'll see, but you know, it's a fine buff. I think it makes sense. I don't think that it's going to impact too many things. So the real reason I want to make the video though is not just to go over the nerfs because you could have done that, not just to go over the buffs because you could have done that, but I want to talk about how I think this impacts the meta currently, right? So I honestly think, right, agility decks not really impacted at all. As I said, Kinsman at 3/2, all the decks that were running Kinsman were really doing it for the drain. I think that this could have been fine if it was left at a 3/3 but drained to 2 instead. By leaving the drain at 3 and just lowering the health, this is still a thievery on legs. I think it still sees play, and I stand by. I think this would see play at 3/1. It just does everything you want. Werebat might come out now, and it might. So it's interesting, right? Like I predict a potential rise in Firestorm, and so Firestorm doesn't really affect Kinsman because of the last gas, but it certainly starts to shut down Werebat, right? So if Firestorm sees a rise, Werebats actually might be kind of phased out of like an auto include, but for the most part, right now, until we see the rise of Firestorm actually come to fruition, I think he's fine to leave in, and Tazcad's just Tazcad. So your agility based decks, I don't think take a big hit. If any of them do, I think it would be the Ramp Scout because they may have actually used these for trading to establish board presence and make it to the late game where they can play their fatties. So if anything, this hurts Scout more than other decks, but for the most part, like your agility stuff is fine. Control Mage, in my opinion, takes kind of a big hit. Brilliant Experiment, Elusive Schemer, the Healing Potion, their Dragon Priest, right? Like this looks pretty targeted. It looks like Control Mage for the second straight round of balance changes is kind of getting bullied, even with it being underrepresented last month, which I also find interesting. So, yeah, I don't know what the deck will do. I think it'll stick around. I think even with these, it's still good enough. It's got the best removal packages. It's got great life gain. Pillaging Tribune was not on this list, so it can still stabilize. But it's going to be going through some changes, right? We may or may not see like the rise of Desperate Conjuring again. We'll probably see variants that are not running Brilliant Experiment anymore and kind of go back to more traditional lists from a couple months ago. Whatever the case is, there will be some changes. It won't be the same Control Mage list you've seen for like the last month and a half, 2 months. So you expect that, right? That version like is definitely worse now, and it will need to go through some changes. As I said, Divine Fervor, Spellsword token decks definitely hurt. I think Monk will be fine. Crusader might be fine. So that certainly hurts. So those decks are all impacted like negatively. So decks that I think that are going to benefit from that, right? So as you're looking at this list, I think Action Assassin slash Prophecy Assassin probably get played more because the 3/2 Kinsman Action Assassin doesn't care about. They want to go face anyway. They weren't really looking to trade. Um, Same thing with the Werebat, right? They might even just cut it. Who knows? They might decide, all right, it's not necessary. Let's just throw something else in the slot. We'll see. But yeah, I think Action Assassin and Prophecy Assassin, in all honesty, aren't really affected very much from this round of nerfs. And so since other decks are affected, I think you'll see those still get played. I can say the same thing about Archer, right? Tezcad going to 9, Archer kind of doesn't really like super care about. I don't think they care much about Kinsman being a 3/2. You might see some Archer decks that drop Werebat, but for the most part, like Archer's still Archer. It's still going to be probably Soul Rest slash Burn and Pillage based, so you're fine. Um, the other big winner, in my opinion, so like when you're really looking at this list, the deck that I think is going to be like your tier one for sure, like I think it was already kind of tier one, but it's joining the ranks of tier one, is going to be the aggressive, like prophecy based battle mage deck. So, um, it's been gaining popularity. Ganja, Miracle Ganja, he's a player known in the community, has piloted it to high legend now 2 months in a row. It's certainly powerful, and it just got new weapons, right? It got new weapons in the form of nerfs to many of the other decks, right? Nerfs to Scout because their early game minions are weaker. Nerfs to Control Mage, so that helps it because it can race those even faster. And then Orc Gatekeeper gaining Prophecy means that you can just kind of throw it in, right? Like that deck was already running Camlor and Sentinel, for example. The 2/4 guard just because I had Prophecy. Or Gatekeeper, even if that deck list stays utterly the same throughout, immediately replaces it. You'd much rather have a 4/2 than a 2/4 because you're trying to be aggressive. And the fact that you can split the stats and put it on something else that's even more aggressive or may already have ward is just that much better, right? So, Crusader might also see a buff in the form of Orc Gatekeeper because I could certainly see you wanting to play that. The guard might matter in mirror matches or in other aggressive matches just to prevent lethal so that you can swing. The 4/2 stats that basically get charged, right? Because if they don't kill it, then you can turn around and attack the next turn. Is good. Even if they kill the 2/2 guard, you might have buffed something else, right? So, again, this guy getting Prophecy combined with the nerfs to everything else, I think means you're going to see probably more Crusader. I think you're going to see more Battle Mage for sure. I think that those two might actually end up just being the big winners. In fact, I would just dare say that any aggressive deck that was already running Burn and Pillage, because that means you're strength based, just got that much better as well because you can now Burn and Pillage for 2 instead of 3 and clear both Kinsman and Werebat. Yeah, so I think that's what you can expect to see, right? We're not going to know the full extent probably for at least a month in terms of how it 100% impacts the meta, but that's what my immediate thought is, right? I think that those are your immediate beneficiaries, and I also think that you might start seeing more control decks that are like heavier favored on intelligence, because again, I could see theoretically the rise of Firestorm. Minions got smaller, and even Orc Gatekeepers, who's probably going to see a lot more play now. He's got 2 health. Divine Fervor costs more, so Sorcerer control, Assassin control, even potentially. I think those two. I think those two could see a spike in play, or at least short-term spike in play as people try things out. So kind of look out for that. And yeah, that's the conclusion. Sorry that the video is late, but I can only do what I can do. I got some more videos coming in the cooker, so over the next couple of days, keep an eye out. You'll see some more stuff as well. And as always, thanks for hanging out and thanks for watching.